It's time for the Spoony One! Wrestling Show! It's time for the Spoony One!
I'm in a little bit of a better mood this time around. Impact really wasn't that much better. It was a little better, but still, I think this week more than any other, I really didn't want to do this show for the sole reason. This is going to make you laugh. Civilization 5 came out, and I'm having so much fun playing Civ 5. And then I turn, and my PVR kicks on, and Impact starts playing. And it's like you wake up and there's snow, and you're like, I'm going to go play in the snow. Actually, I would never know that feeling, but it's going to be a snow day, and then you have school anyway, and you have to go watch fucking Impact. But, Civ 5. I'm not going to do a full review of that one, and, I guess all I'll say about this one right now is, one, I actually had to upgrade my system to play Civ 5. Whatever the minimum requirements for that game are listed are bullshit. Because I had a pretty ninja fucking computer before that, and, it wasn't good enough. And honestly, I'll go on a little bit of a tangent here. The real problem was my video card. And video cards apparently age fast. Because I had an NVIDIA 8800 GTS, which was a pretty good card at the time. I remember spending about $250, round about that, on that card. That was 2007. And so, 2010... not only was the game chugging pretty heavily on that game, it was outright freezing. And it was the video card, honestly. And I didn't get that off the forums. My video card was just not good enough, by far not good enough, to keep up with that fucking game. And I have a really great processor, really good RAM, so that was the only other real option. Either that or like a hardware fault somewhere else. But I upgraded the video card. Works great. It works smooth as silk. I have heard a lot of people had problems with that game. Apparently some kind of stability issues. I'm not sure, but that's the only real problem I've had with it so far. The other problem, and I don't really care about this, but it was kind of annoying to realize, is that if you're playing with mods, you don't get achievements. And there aren't really that many mods out right now, but I just added one that added like a clock in the top center of the screen. That's the only mod I have, but if you have any mods enabled, you don't get achievements. And I don't really care about achievements, but if I've earned them, I want them. So I don't go out hunting achievements, but if I've earned something, give it to me. So all of a sudden I was going I've earned 5 achievements by now. Why don't I get them? And that's why. Most of the achievements in Civ 5 are just win the game with each civilization. That's it. Most of them. Anyway, so I watch Impact, and this is again where, you know how I mentioned how the timeline was a little skewed? I was remembering things maybe a little out of order, because what they did was they taped maybe 2, maybe even 3 Impacts in a row. So, having read some spoilers and having some things spoiled for me, it was a little hard to keep things straight, especially when it comes to the whole logic of it. You remember when I went on that huge tirade about how Rob Van Dam is coming back before the tournament to determine his title is completed? Well, this is the week Rob Van Dam comes back. And so, the first match is Rob Terry versus... I'm sorry. Throat's dry. Rob Terry versus Abyss. And before this match even starts, we see security backstage who are trying to, they're shouting at Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy, who are trying to get into the Impact Zone. They're trying to get out, and security is no! It's really just a bunch of really chaotic yelling in a dark place, and you can't really tell what's going on. In fact, the only reason I recognized Jeff. I probably shouldn't have recognized Jeff, because he was wearing, this really stupid fucking hat. And the commentators are like, that's Jeff and Rob Van Dam, and whatever. So they have the match, and Rob Terry dominates early with his power. He's much more powerful, which is weird because Abyss is supposed to be the monster. Abyss regains the advantage with a prolonged, 5-second eye rake where he's just ah! And the ref is all, no. you're mean, stop. And, it's the exact sort of thing, like, he's trying to rip Rob Terry's eyes out of his head, and the ref is completely powerless to say or do anything about this in TNA, because in TNA, you can commit basically any act of assault up to and including stabbing someone with a branding iron and not get DQ'd. So, Abyss gets the advantage after that, and then they cut back to RVD and Jeff, who are backstage, but they're in a different place backstage, heading towards the Impact Zone, talking about what they want to do to Abyss. And Mike Tenay, Mike Tenay and Tazz note that they've somehow ditched the security. And Mike Tenay suggests, and I quote, "Maybe Jeff has some kind of special entrance to the Impact Zone." Yeah, I'm sure Jeff has a secret entrance to the Impact Zone that security doesn't know about. Because Jeff's a secret entrance to the Impact Zone? That's the most logical suggestion. That I want to play Civ 5. Okay. So the fight spills to the outside. We still have a match, by the way. Abyss throws a guardrail at Rob Terry and gets DQ'd. And apparently Jeff does have a secret entrance to the Impact Zone because Rob Van Dam approaches Abyss with a chair in his hand. And now Jeff Hardy is nowhere to be seen. So apparently Jeff showed Rob the secret entrance to the Impact Zone and let him in and sealed it behind him. So security couldn't find the secret Impact Zone entrance. And so I wrote a question in my notes. If you were beaten into a coma by a man with a nail-studded bat, wouldn't you bring a shotgun? Or a samurai sword? I don't know. It's wrestling logic, I know, but if a guy beat me almost unto death with a bat covered in nails, I'd fucking kill him. I wouldn't grab a folding chair from a random passerby. I'd pretty much load up a shotgun with white phosphorus rounds and shove it up his ass. That's just me. But, this is really about the world title. I don't know. Whatever. So, this is the part that made me laugh. And I might be the only guy in the world who noticed this. But, okay. So, Rob Van Dam and Abyss start to fight after the DQ. And they have the epic duel of bat and chair, I guess. And security and backstage agents start to break up the brawl. And they shove Rob Van Dam one side, and Abyss starts to back up the ramp. And security is, Abyss wants to fight. He's like, I'm going to kill Rob, 10, 10, 10. And so Abyss is trying to come down the ramp, and security is waving their arms, and going, no fighting, and no fighting in wrestling, and no! And Abyss backing up the ramp, and he's... The only reason that Abyss doesn't just push the security guards down is because every member of the security staff is brandishing a folding chair. We'll hit you with these folding chairs, Abyss. So apparently the folding chair is standard issue equipment now for security guards in TNA. Forget such things as pepper spray or riot batons or nightsticks or anything that security guards normally wield to ply their trade. No. Mall security, if you start shit in a mall or you start to steal shit, or if you're at if there's a terrorist act going on at the next Giants game, the security will stand up from their chair, pick up their chair, and go to work because, why be redundant? Why spend unnecessary money? You've got a chair. That's the tools of your trade right there. So security, by all means, pick up a folding chair and use that to quell riots in the Impact Zone. I guess it's efficient that way. Okay, so Rob, eventually, they break up the fight, and Rob gets in the ring and grabs a mic, and he says, I want to see Eric Bischoff. And so he basically takes Eric to task for everything I said, that, how could you strip me of the title? You didn't even give me a chance to defend it. And Eric has no answer. And he says, I want the first shot at the winner at Bound for Glory. I actually think a more reasonable demand would be to be put in the match at Bound for Glory, but whatever. Honestly, I'm happy that at least some semblance of logic is being thrown. I really hate to compliment anything that's been done in this angle with the fucking... I won't even get started on it again, but at least this makes some sense. And I guess it makes a little sense that the reason he doesn't want... He doesn't say he doesn't want to be at the Bound for Glory match, but he says, first I want Abyss at Bound for Glory. And so Bischoff says, all right, you got Abyss at Bound for Glory in a match. And already I see warning signs for this fucking thing, because you've got... It's a match. It's not a street fight. It's not any kind of... I think we've by far past the point of having a match with a referee at a pay-per-view. I don't mean to keep harping on this, but Abyss beat the man into a coma with a bat covered in nails, and you think they're going to get inside a four-sided ring and wrestle each other until one man pins another man's shoulders to the mat for a count of 3? These men should be pressing charges. Rob really should be filing criminal charges, but Eric Bischoff's like, yeah, this is gonna be by the rule. Fuck this, I don't know. So, So Rob Van Dam leaves, and the Pope comes out while Eric's still in the ring. And the Pope, this heel turn of the Pope makes no sense. He's a heel now. He just is, and they're trying. Honest to God, they are trying to explain it, and the explanation is I can't even call it circular logic. The logic comes from nowhere, goes nowhere, and their reasoning is completely wrong. It's like an insane man saying, like, well, the sky is blue because ducks are white. The facts they are throwing into this thing, they're saying them like they're conclusive proof, and they don't even relate to what they're talking about. I'll try to explain. So, he says, Eric's full of crap, and he wants to know why Rob Van Dam gets a title shot after Bound for Glory. And why do Jeff and Kurt get to be in the main event and not the Pope? Well, Pope, it's because you fucking lost! He's like, why? He's like, Jeff and Kurt didn't win. Why doesn't the Pope get to be in the match? You lost! You are the only one who lost. He lost decisively. He says they're holding him back. He says Eric's a con man, and he says, like, we all know why you don't want the Pope to be in this match. You lost! And so Eric's like, you know what? Why don't we talk about this in private? This is not the place to be airing these fucking stupid grievances here. And he leaves. And so they start to leave, and Pope follows him. He's like, all right, I'm getting somewhere now. And Tazz says, the Pope, quote, makes some valid points. No, he doesn't. He makes no valid points. He has no point. This whole thing, he backstage, Pope is still ranting about how his point is that Kurt and Jeff did not win their match. They didn't win their matches, so why are they in the main event and not Pope? Because that's it. And yet the reasoning here, I suppose, is that he's saying Kurt and Jeff did not win. No, it was a draw. Pope lost. There's a huge difference, a world of fucking difference between a loss and a draw. Ask any soccer fan, okay? But I guess that's what he's going for. But it loses so much weight when Pope is the guy who lost. If I could think of so many other ways this storyline could make more sense where Pope has a legitimate grievance. Like, if maybe the Pope lost his match because... Here's hypothetical. Let's say Anderson hit the thumb to the eye, or gets a low blow, or doesn't break for a 5 count, and the ref lets it go. But when Pope accidentally hits a low blow, or accidentally gets an eye rake, or accidentally doesn't break a 5 count, the referee disqualifies Pope for doing the same thing, but Anderson didn't get caught, but the Pope does. So, right there, you have a grievance. Pope can say, like, look, I see what's going on here. I see that you have someone that you want to be in the main event. I see this conspiracy that management wants Anderson, doesn't want the Pope to be in the title picture because the adjudication, the refereeing here is a blatant screw job. I'm getting screwed here. The referees are singling me out. I got disqualified for no reason. Or that's it. That's what I'm thinking of. Like, there has to be some basis for the unfairness to go on here, and I'm just not seeing it. You know, like, Pope he's got this grievance, and he has no reason to have a grievance. He lost. Any other way this could have gone down. Maybe if Pope lost by countout or something like that, where it wasn't a decisive pinfall loss, he might have some grievance, like a DQ, a countout, a no contest, or hell, if even somebody had run in and screwed Pope out of the match, like if somebody had hit Pope with a chair, or there was an injury, some mitigating factor where Pope's loss wasn't entirely clean as a sheet, just lost clean. But this makes no sense. Chris Sabin versus Jeremy Buck, great match. This was a really good match, and it makes sense because you have some of the best wrestlers in the company having a great match, and this is actually a really good story. I'm digging the hell out. Like, this is the only thing in TNA that I give a shit about right now, and maybe I even shouldn't give that much of a shit about it because they're employing this rule that has never been mentioned before, and the whole premise of this, and I think I mentioned this, is that Generation Me lost their tag title match, but after the bell, they beat up Shelley, and they injured his neck, and so they're saying, you know, if we injure you, you can't defend the title within 30 days, and by rule, if you can't do that, you have to surrender the titles. And so that's what they're going for here, is they're losing their matches, but they're kind of winning the war in an attrition sense, where that's what happens here is Sabin beats Jeremy Buck, but after the match, they beat up Sabin because he has no help. Shelley's hurt. And so they do their draping DDT, they hurt his neck, and so things are not looking good for the Motor City Machine Guns because they may not be able to defend their titles. I like that. It's a simple story, you know? It doesn't involve magic. It doesn't involve fucking branding irons and 2x4s and shadow politics from WCW. It's a simple... It's a bunch of self-entitled pricks who are trying to cheat their way to a title. And it's about a bunch of guys who feel disrespected, who are emerged from a best-of-5 series with one of the toughest tag teams in the entire, company. And they're tired, they're beat up, they've gone through these wars, and the injuries are starting to mount up on these guys who may very well lose the title. So, it's a great story. I love these matches. I love these guys. They're doing a great job. And so this is like the one shining beacon of stability and good wrestling and good sense in the entire company. So I got a bunch of complaints on Twitter, like, you are not giving the Young Bucks and you're not giving the Machine Guns enough credit. I give them all the credit in the world. They're the one good thing about this fucking show. One. The only good thing. So, if I believe me, it's the only thing on the entire show worth watching. That's it. This is a note I made. This whole time, there's this... Tenay sometimes, Mike Tenay, has this weird... When he gets pissy... Okay, Tazz is supposed to be kind of this heelish commentator. He's not a heel, but he's the guy who understands the heels, if that makes sense. So he's like, Generation Me is all the entire match. They're doing stuff saying it's all about me or it's all about us and we want the titles, and they're talking about the stuff. And Tazz is like, he's like, I get where these guys are coming from, and I kind of like their attitude. And Tanae's like, what? What do you mean? And he's like, look, it is all about the titles. These guys are driven. They're focused. They're doing what they got to do. They're making statements. They're being badass. They're not pussyfooting around. They're not they're coming out and they're taking it to the machine guns. They're beating their asses. And they're doing what they got to do to win the war. And I like that. And Tazz is saying, I like that. It's about the titles. It's about winning. It's what it's all about. It's all it's ever been about wrestling is establishing dominance in this. So Tenay, he's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I don't understand you anymore, Tazz. Like, this is horrifying. Like, how can you condone this? And they're beating up Sabin this whole time, and they're beating his ass. He's like, how can you condone this behavior? This is deplorable. I abhor you, Tazwell. And Tazz is like, look, I'm not saying, he's like, I get what you're, like, Tazz is backpedaling, like, huge. He's like, I don't know, Mike Tenay, what's up your ass here? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's about attitude. I like these guys, they have an attitude and they want to win. And Tenay's like, you're a fucked up maniac, Tazz. And so they do the DDT, and so Tenay's like, I bet you condone this too. And Tazz is like, no, I don't. Like, he's like, okay, maybe they went a little bit too far here. Like it's about establishing dominance, but you never want to see anyone get hurt. And Mike Tenay's like, yeah, sure, Tazz, sure. And Tazz, like, this whole time has not been acting heelish at all. And so the last thing is, this is the worst part. As they're leaving, Generation Me steals Sabin's tag team title belt. And Tenay says, quote, oh, I bet you're going to rubber stamp that also? He hasn't rubber stamped anything. It's bullshit. Like, Mike, I don't know. Mike Tenay gets, like I said, he gets a burr up his ass about some things where, like, he starts accusing Tazz of being, like, super heelish. Like, I remember when ECW first invaded, and it was kind of like the Nexus thing where ECW was beating up, like, everybody. And then they dropped that idea. But when it was still kind of like, oh, what's ECW doing here? Mike Tenay was all accusatory of Tazz. He's like, you ran with ECW for a long time. You sure you don't know anything? And Taz's like, I don't know nothing. Like, I don't talk to those guys. And Tenay's like, I don't know. Mike Tenay sometimes gets crazy. What I don't like about this title feud is I never like any feud that has the challengers or has anyone stealing the title belts. And this happens a lot. And I never liked it. I don't know why. It's just like, the bad guy beats up the good guy and steals his title belt. It's worse when the good guy steals the bad guy's title belt, which happens also. It's just dumb. I never liked that thing where, like, oh, we got your belts. I guess we're champions now. And so I remember there was at one time, what was it? It wasn't the hardcore title. It was like the X Division title. I think it was. My memory of it's really bad, but there was a time when somebody stole the X Division title. I think it was somebody stole Suicide's title. I can't remember. But they're like, if you want your title belt back, you have to beat me for it. And so they had like a ladder match or an Ultimate X match where they hung the title belt over the ring. And so the guy had, like, I think the guy, who was it? The guy was like the champion in exile. And he had to win his own belt back. And so they made it like an official title match where the guy had to go climb the ladder and get his belt back, or the other guy would just keep it. It was just so stupid. I never liked any of that. But this is where it gets bad. Lacey Von Erich and Velvet Sky versus Taylor Wilde and Hamada for the TNA Knockouts tag titles. And once again, every week I'm amazed there is a fucking Knockouts tag division. But whatever. I wrote, this match is completely logical instead of having Lacey fight Tara and Madison. Lacey is, in all capital letters, dreadful. At one point, Lacey goes for a Hurricane Rana, and she botches it so badly that the commentators have no idea what to call it. They say, quote, that was that. Finish comes when Madison... This was a really weird moment. It's easy to explain, but hard to... Unless you've seen it, it is played out really weird. Lacey Von Erich was pretty much in this match for about 95% of it. And when Velvet Sky tried to interfere, she was thrown at almost... Like, I don't know what madness has infected whoever is booking these matches, whatever agents are booking these matches. But Lacey Von Erich is horrible. She may very well be the worst performer currently working in wrestling today. I say that without hyperbole. I honestly cannot think of a worse performer right now on televised wrestling who is worse. Let me think. Man. Santino Marella? I hate that fucking guy. Hornswoggle? You're in rare company, Lacey. She sucks. She sucks bad. And when you're putting her in a major title feud over the course of several weeks and having her basically be the character who is dominating the match, that is fucking horrible. So, the finish comes when Madison Rayne speeds in and she clocks Lacey in the back of the head with Tara's motorcycle helmet. And the way it happens is weird. This is what I'm talking about when it's weird. Is Madison hits Lacey with the helmet. She goes down. She takes a bump for the helmet, and then she gets up immediately, like almost like she was taking a clothesline or something like that. Where she goes boom, and then she gets up and she starts walking around like she has a minor cramp in her neck. She's like, ah. And then Hamada hits an enziguri and pins her. But it was just the selling of the motorcycle helmet to the head was so weird. I've never seen anything like that. And weird shot. I don't know. That was not well done. And yet, I'm going to get to this. I'm actually going to do a special video of this. Probably almost immediately after I do this one. You didn't see NXT. NXT had probably, again, without hyperbole, probably the worst finish I've ever seen in a women's wrestling match. And, I will quantify this one. The worst finish in a wrestling match that did not involve an injury, like a brutal injury. Like, I've seen worse finishes that were like, Sid breaking his leg. An injury, a screw job interference, or just the worst straight up legit finish of any match I've ever seen. Like, not involving a referee, weird count out decision, or whatever. You'll see. It was, what was it? AJ versus, I've already forgotten her name. It was the AJ match. It was so fucking bad. Yeah, you'll get to that one. My main question, I'm just reading my notes, and it's Angelina Love comes out to check on Lacey, makes one wonder why she wasn't there to support a team in the first place. This happens again. Then Dixie Carter comes out to the announce table to sit with Mike Tenay and Tazz, and she announces at Bound for Glory as the main event, it will be a battle royal. I believe it's an over-the-top rope battle royal, with the prize being $100,000. And so Tazz asks her, I can't believe they remember this, but Tazz asks her about that fucking stupid surprise. You remember what I was talking about on Twitter? And I might have talked about it here. But Dixie Carter, months back, mentioned that we were going to very soon see. She had just gotten off the phone with the president of Spike TV, and she was going to institute a surprise that would, quote, change the face of wrestling forever. You remember that? I do. But Tazz asks her about it, and Dixie immediately backpedals. She says, it's more of a change than a surprise, and that it's going to go into effect October 7th. Here's what it is. They're going to go shoot the show live, which changes nothing. You know, this in no way changes wrestling forever. And a couple things. You know, this is not a major announcement. It doesn't change TNA at all, except, here's what it does change. TNA wrestling is taped, okay? It's never live, except for the pay-per-views, obviously. What's going to change now is that being live, it's going to be worse. They are not going to be able to hide the botches, the shitty matches. They're not going to be able to edit around the shit that goes on in this show. And as soon as I think that, I think, not that they were really doing that anyway, that the show is taped. You know, I honestly don't think you're going to see a single thing different. Now, I mean, I said it was going to be worth. I don't think you're going to see a single fucking change. Because whatever advantages that being taped offers a wrestling show, which are many, you know, SmackDown takes full advantage of being taped, or it used to. I'm not sure if they're going live anymore now that they're going to the Sci-Fi Channel or whatever, yeah. But if you've ever been to a SmackDown event live, they will actually shoot. If a promo is bad, they'll shoot it again. If Kane's promos are heavily edited, because if he stumbles over his words or whatever, they will edit it. If a match finish is blown, they will go back out and just shoot the finish of the match again. You know, if a match is bad, they will go out and do the match. If a match is really bad, they won't even show the fucking match. So, but, you know, TNA, if they blow a finish, if they do something stupid, they'll show it. I don't know, man. Like, at TNA, when they tape a show, they might as well be shooting it live. I don't know. But, yeah. I don't think this is going to change a single fucking thing. Like, knowing now that the show is live, do you care anymore? I don't. Like, I cannot imagine anyone being on the fence of TNA. Like, you know, here's the thing. Let's say you're a wrestling fan, and I tell you, you don't watch TNA, and I tell you, oh, you know, Impact's going to be live on October 7th. You won't. Nobody in the world will be like, what? I have to see this now. Nobody's going like, that changes everything. I have to see fucking Impact now. It's live. I don't know. The Pope... Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention this. The whole thing with the whole Pope thing. Where Pope's like, it's not fair. Why don't I get to be in the main event? And Eric Bischoff's like, you know what? You have a point. He has no point, but he says he has a point. He says, if you can beat Samoa Joe tonight, I'll put you in the main event at Bound for Glory. So, here's the Pope versus Samoa Joe. The way it works is that the Pope hasn't won, and he pulls his knee pads down for the DVE, which is basically like the backstabber, like Carlita's backstabber. But as he's doing this, Jeff Jarrett comes down applauding for Samoa Joe, like he's trying to cheer Joe on, and this distracts the shit out of the Pope. He's like, "What the fuck is this? What, Jeff Jarrett? Your hair is so bad," and so like I don't know, and so he comes out and like this throws Pope completely off his game. Then the Wolfpack comes down and beats up Jarrett, which has nothing to do with the Pope. But Pope is like stunned by this. He's like, there's things going on. I can't comprehend this. And so Joe comes and puts him in the coquina clutch and chokes Pope out. Joe wins. So Pope is not in the Bound for Glory main event, which renders the last 2 weeks of programming involving the Pope entirely pointless. So what I find funny is that for all Pope's complaining about how he's been screwed, about how management doesn't care, he has now lost 2 matches entirely cleanly and yet is still claiming that he has a valid claim on the World Heavyweight title. He has lost entirely clean. In fact, not only has he proven not to be as good a wrestler as Anderson or Samoa Joe, he's proven this because the interference, nobody in any way interfered with him. And in fact, Samoa Joe, as he was watching his current tag team partner and friend Jeff Jarrett getting beat up on by the Wolfpack, was able to avoid being distracted and able to stay focused long enough to actually choke the Pope out, win his match, before going out to help Jeff Jarrett, which I thought was A, kind of cold of Joe, but B, also speaks a great deal for Joe's poise and focus in the ring. That, if you actually made that a character trait for Joe, that actually is pretty telling. You know, he was focused on winning the match first and helping his buddy out second, which I thought was interesting. And trust me, they will make nothing of this in the coming weeks. I, being a much smarter booker, would, like, if Jeff Jarrett actually cornered Joe backstage and was like, "What the fuck was that?" Joe would be like, "What?" And Jeff Jarrett's all, you win your match. Like, I'm getting jumped by fucking these 300-pound gorillas, fucking Kevin Nash, and you win your match instead of helping me. And Joe's like, "Yeah, I wanted to win my match." And, you could have actually had some kind of tension going on there. Much better booked contest, by the way. And, of course, after this, they have this brawl. All four guys, the Wolfpack, Joe, and Jarrett, are getting into this brawl, just like last week. And just like last week, nobody cares. Nobody. People, there's another. I should have taken another screenshot of this, by the way. There's a shot, I believe, of Jeff Jarrett getting choked by Sting. And there's this woman in the crowd who's doing this. Nobody's on their feet for this. Nobody understands what's going on. And every time this happens, every time you ever see any one of these four, the announcers immediately start talking about how they have no idea what's fucking going on. How they wish somebody would fucking explain what's happening. And nobody will say anything. It's just, if it sounds like I'm repeating myself, they're repeating themselves. Every week, they just go over the same ground about how they're fighting and nobody knows what they're fighting about. But, pay to see Bound for Glory, where you might find out what they're talking about. Fuck you. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, these notes. I have so many notes. There's so much that is just shit about this show. Tommy's backstage, Tommy Dreamer. For once, not crying. I know. Stunning. But he's leading the ECW guys around. I think it's Christy Hemme corners them and says, looks like the boys are back in town. And he's like, yeah. I just got out of Dixie Carter's office. And at Bound for Glory, we've got a lethal lockdown match, which is basically a cage full of weapons match. It's almost like, not Survivor Series, but it's like War Games almost. Not even that. It's like either a 4-on-4 or a 5-on-5. Probably 4-on-4, where it starts off one-on-one, I believe. And then, in a certain interval of time, another, one person from each team will enter. But it happens in such a way where only one person comes in at a time. So it's one-on-one, then the timer expires, then another person enters, so it's a 2-on-1 advantage. And then it's 2-on-2, and then 3-on-2, and then 3-on-3. So it keeps going on like that. But it's like that, so there's a cage full of weapons, and so, at Bound for Glory, it's a lethal lockdown. And to determine who gets the man advantage, who consistently, whichever team gets the advantage, that gets their guy in. So whatever, it's always 2-on-1, 3-on-2. Whoever wins the match between Sabu and AJ Styles gets the man advantage. And so Mr. Anderson calls Kurt Angle to the ring, and this was okay. I guess I was in a bad mood at this point, but this was such a generic set of promos. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, Mr. Anderson, I am not impressed with his promo abilities at all. And so many people are. Like, that's really what... Pardon me. So many people say... In fact, they say that's his best feature, is his promos. They're like, as a wrestler, he's average, but man, his promos, he blows you away. I don't see it. I don't fucking see it at all. Like, aside from doing his Mr. thing, like, other than that, he's got nothing. And further, I don't like his asshole gimmick. I don't like that he's a good guy who calls his fans assholes. I don't like that he's a good guy who acts like a heel, which makes, again, no sense. And so he calls Kurt to the ring, and basically they have the most generic set of promos where they both take 5 minutes to explain a piece. Why they didn't like each other, but they respect each other now, but at Bound for Glory, that respect only goes so far, and they have to beat each other. Like, you could have written these promos in your sleep. But this did get interesting at the very end, because pretty much for the first time ever, they are taking the Kurt Angle retirement angle seriously, where if he loses, he retires. Pretty much for the first time, they are discussing this like it has any kind of possibility of happening, like this retirement will carry any weight. Because for months on end before this, Kurt Angle was having matches, and they didn't treat it like... Pretty much Mike Tenay would be like, Angle would have a match with Hernandez, and Mike Tenay would say in passing, by the way, if Kurt Angle loses, he retires. Like, having no fear that this was actually going to happen. Like, the best wrestler in the company is going to retire if he loses. Like, every near fall, these guys should be hinging on every 2 count. Like, oh my god, we almost saw Kurt Angle lose. Like, at no point did they ever build this like it was ever actually going to happen. Because it wasn't. Nobody actually thought that Kurt Angle was going to lose to the number 7 contender. Which was actually a really good way to shoot the entire top 10 contender thing in the foot, because nobody really believed that was going to end until he got to the number 1, but whatever. So, they are finally treating this with a modicum of seriousness, because my favorite part of this, and it was a really good part, was they said, we respect each other, we're going to see each other for Bound for Glory, and so, you're the greatest wrestler in the business, Kurt. And he's like, everyone, I want you to give a big hand to Kurt Angle, the greatest wrestler in the business. And he raises Kurt's hand, and he goes, for the very last time. And Kurt's like, okay. Like, Kurt's like, okay, this is how we're going to play. Like, as long as... So Kurt, finally, almost like it seems like it finally sink into Kurt. Like, he finally understands the stakes. Like, this guy is actually gunning to retire him. And I like that. That was really good. So, never let it be said I won't tell you when the show was really good. This part. I'm just going to tell you what happens, and I cannot explain why it happens. Ric Flair's talking to Fortune backstage, and he says, Bound for Glory 10-10-10 is a huge deal for everybody, not for us. I don't know why he said that. But he says, we got EV2 at Lethal Lockdown, and he's trying to psych AJ up. He's like, you're going to give us the man advantage. You're going to beat Sabu. And somehow, I don't know how, this leads to... It must be like... Apparently this is the thing. Where Ric Flair picks his jacket up, and there's a bottle of something on the bench. And Beer Money's like, oh! Like, the entire room goes, oh! No! And Rick's like, what? What is that? And Beer Money's like, you got iced! And Rick's like, what the fuck does that mean? He's like, if somebody sneaks a bottle of this shit in your stuff, you gotta drink it. And Rick's like, I do? And they're like, yeah, you gotta drop to a knee and you gotta chug this this drink. And Rick's like, all right. So he drops to his knees. I think it's Smirnoff Ice. I guess that's... I've heard of something where, like, college students prank each other with... I guess that's what's called being iced. It's fucking stupid. Mostly because Smirnoff Ice is foul swill that nobody would ever seriously fucking drink. But, you know, somebody sneaks a bottle of Smirnoff Ice in your car or under your jacket and you have to drink it? What if you don't drink it? Are you a pussy? I'd rather think if I don't drink Smirnoff Ice, it just means I have taste. But for some reason, Ric Flair is like, I'll do it, and he drops to an knee, he chugs the bottle of stuff. And that's the segment. Okay. I got nothing. I don't think... These are bad guys. Fortune... You know, it seems to me like Fortune is having a really fun time. They don't seem like all that bad guys to me. It just seems like they're focused. Except when they're icing it, I guess. I guess if you wanted me to hate them, having these guys... You know, if this becomes a regular thing where they ice each other and they have to drink Smirnoff Ice, I guess they're douchebags, I guess. This just seemed to accomplish nothing, I guess, is my confusion. They spent like 2 minutes having Ric Flair chug a Smirnoff Ice, and he chugged one. Congratulations? More Nash and Sting. Nash and Sting are asking the Pope for any information he can give. Information about what? About who? What they would use this information for? I don't know. Pope has no idea what they're talking about. Join the fucking club. And so Nash asks, quote, have you been talking to any broads around here? Getting any information? Pope still has no idea what they're talking about. He says, broads? Yeah, he calls them broads. And so eventually Nash goes, Tessmacher? And Pope says, Tessmacher? You knew about that? And Sting says, what do you think we've been fighting for all this time? I don't know! I have to read this exchange. I transcribed this whole thing. You been talking to any broads around here? Getting any information? Tessmacher? You know? What do you think we've been fighting for all this time? Y'all count me in then. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Jesus! It's like if you wrote a screenplay by using the magnetic poetry you fling on a refrigerator. The sentences these people are saying do not connect in any way. There's no natural progression of logic from one statement to the next. There's no clear motivations for anybody. It's like this was written on the planet of Bizarro Superman. You know what? No. Bizarro Superman has logic. It's reversed logic, but it exists. Bizarro Superman would be confused by this shit. Nobody is making sense. What does Miss Tessmacher have to do with anything? What is broads? What have they been fighting for all this time? Please tell me. Sabu versus AJ Styles. This is a ladder match. Oh! I didn't know that. I wrote, wait, a ladder match? Why? For what? Then they show the key to the cage hanging over the ring. Alright. Again, this is where something really stupid happens. AJ comes to the ring with Ric Flair and Matt Morgan. Again, raising the question, where are the ECW guys? Sabu comes out alone. What could the ECW guys possibly be doing that's more important right now than this? Are they icing each other? Hell, like, Fortune got the icing done before the match. Like, we've established by now that Fortune has no problems beating up helpless people, regardless of the numbers. 6-on-1 doesn't matter; they'll beat them up. And yet they throw Sabu out there in a no disqualification ladder match, alone, with Matt Morgan and Ric Flair, two guys who are obviously going to cheat and who immediately do. And so, my complaint is minimized somewhat by the fact that they, basically everyone interferes immediately, and ECW, one by one almost, comes out to help. But they do come out. I just wonder why they didn't come out to start with. Are they fucking stupid? So, like, the big story for this one, I guess, is that Foley is back. It's like Foley waddles to ringside. He's the first one there. And so they attack Foley, and everyone comes in to back up Foley. And so the whole thing breaks down. Like, ECW and Fortune start fighting one another. And the way it breaks down is Sabu's about to win. James Storm comes in and kills Sabu with a beer bottle, and then helps AJ grab the key. So now Fortune has the man advantage at Lethal Lockdown. And now I can honestly not remember the last match that ECW has won in this entire feud. And what I think is kind of telling about this whole ECW thing is that Fortune has not only looked completely and utterly dominant at every turn in this entire feud, they've won every match. Every single one in decisive fashion. But not only that, they've won them in such a way that makes them look more hardcore, more innovative, and more downright dominant than ECW ever was. Like, Tommy Dreamer, the innovator of violence, got beaten by AJ clean in a hardcore match. Got shown up at his own game. Once again at this ladder match, they get shown up at their own game by Fortune. There is no inherent drama in any of this. ECW is inferior. They've clearly demonstrated this on numerous occasions. And in fact, we've demonstrated at every turn they're not even as hardcore as Fortune is on a regular basis. So, tune in for Bound for Glory. See these guys lose again. Honestly, I think EV2 is going to win this next match because they have to throw him a win eventually. He says naively. Yeah, ECW's repeatedly getting clowned. Backstage, Jeff is promising Rob Van Dam that he's going to win the title and he's going to give Rob the first shot. Rob Van Dam leaves, and then suddenly the cameraman pulls a Blair Witch. The camera crashes to the ground and doesn't move, so we can't really see anything. So we hear a lot of violence going on, and we hear Abyss, it's obviously Abyss, beating the shit out of Jeff, screaming, 10, 10, 10, my friend, and just beating him mercilessly. And so we get the impression, although we can't see anything but his leg, that Abyss is repeatedly and completely destroying Jeff with Janice, the board with nails in it. And then we cut to commercial. When we come back, Abyss is dragging Jeff to the ring, and Jeff looks fine. There's not a mark on the guy. And in fact, at one point, Abyss tears Jeff's shirt off. and there's not a single bruise or mark on the man. Who apparently, like, I don't get this. I thought they made it very clear, through implication at least, that Abyss had beaten Jeff into complete submission with Janice. Which apparently didn't happen because there's not a mark on the guy. So Jeff is completely wrecked the entire time. He lays completely motionless, doing nothing this entire time. So it's implied that Abyss did the same thing to Jeff. In fact, the entire time that Jeff was getting his ass kicked, Abyss is like, I'm beating you up just like your little friend RVD. That's exactly what he's saying. In those exact words, he's like, just like your little friend, I'm beating you with my stick. So it's not even, like, ambiguous that he's getting beat up with Janice. But he comes out, no blood on the guy. I honestly have no clue what the fuck is happening. So he says RVD was never supposed to come back, and they gave him orders to take him out of TNA. He says he made one mistake. He left Rob breathing, a mistake he will correct at Bound for Glory. He says at 10-10-10, Abyss isn't just going to beat him. He's not going to cripple him. He's going to slaughter him. So basically, we have a man with a history of aggravated assault making a clear and precise promise to kill a man on pay-per-view, on TV. And this is a legally sanctioned match. This is a match that we're paying for when Abyss has promised to murder another man, and who has attempted to murder the man, and who has tortured people who have had no connection to the wrestling business whatsoever. So, of course, Rob comes out, and he's all bandaged the fuck up. And he comes out with a chair. Once again, I question why not a shotgun. But he comes out, Rob puts up a fight, but he's too badly hurt, and Abyss starts to kick his ass. So, Abyss finally grabs the stick, and he's looming over Rob. And the funniest part that happened, I can remember, is he's looming over Rob, and he's about to kill him with the stick. He is about to literally kill the man with the stick. In terms of the fictional story that we're trying to tell, he has said, I will kill you at Bound for Glory, and I will kill you the first chance I get. So Rob comes out, and he is going to kill this man. And so they show the copyright logo on the bottom of the screen, because Impact is wrapping up. And Mike Tenay says, we're out of time, but stay tuned, because Reaction is next. Yeah, because, gee, it's a good thing we have Reaction following this show, because otherwise you'd miss the blatant first-degree murder of a man on national TV. So stay tuned. Stay tuned? Stay tuned. Mike, there is a man about to cave in another man's head and pulp his brains with a 2x4 with nails in it. Stay tuned? Good thing Reaction's going on, or you'd miss this. This is the stupidest fucking show I've ever seen in my life. Then something else happens. Just before Rob dies, this is Reaction now. You would not have known this if you hadn't watched Reaction. Which, thank God, I did. Inc. comes out. Shannon Moore and Jesse Neal, who have not been on TV for months. They come out. They attack Abyss, and they send him packing. All right. All of a sudden, Abyss, who is the monster, who is working for them, who is armed with a fucking Tetsubo, is all of a sudden afraid of Shannon Moore and Jesse Neal. So Abyss, scared shitless now of these two guys who I barely recognize, but who are unarmed, against a man with a weapon. He runs. He's backing up the ramp, and this whole time he's raving about 10, 10, 10. He's this close to the camera, like he's seething into the camera, like just screaming about 10, 10, 10. And this was disgusting, because the whole time he is spewing about them so much, and about how Bound for Glory, he's going to kill Rob Van Dam. He literally coats the entire lens in his spit. Like, not just he sprays on the lens, he spews spittle on the lens so thick you almost can't see him. The man sprays like a pint of saliva on the fucking lens. And so, reaction really has nothing to do with anything. It's just, they just kind of recap. This one, it was pointless. They just talk about, there was actually, they did talk about some, fuck it, I'll talk about it. The first thing they go over is Jesse Neal and Shannon Moore backstage, and they're trying to give some explanation as for why the fuck they're helping out Rob Van Dam, a man that they've never been seen with, a man who they've never had any connection with Rob Van Dam in the past, never been televised, no previous history, nothing. So all of a sudden they're coming out to help Rob Van Dam. No clue why. So they go backstage and they ask them why. And both Shannon Moore and Jesse Neal say, look, we just saw this guy, Jeff Hardy's my friend, and I saw this, they say that they were out there more to save Jeff Hardy, honestly. And they said, Rob Van Dam, I saw him about to die. Abyss says he wants to kill this guy. And I couldn't sit back and let that happen. I had to go out there and do the right thing. So, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, all right. He wanted to do the right thing. He's right. He was about to watch a man get murdered. Wouldn't you go out to help? I would. I think I would. But what this said to me was, this was a funny thought I had after this. It was like, Jesse Neal goes, I had to do the right thing. There was a man about to die. Apparently, the rest of the locker room didn't give a shit. The rest of the locker room was watching Rob Van Dam about to die. And they're like, well, that'll happen. And they didn't care. Nobody fucking cared. Security? Oh, this whole time, security, the chair-wielding security, now they don't care. This whole time, they broke it apart one time, and by that, they were off the clock. Security, they didn't care. The rest of the locker room, they didn't care. The rest of EV2, they didn't care. Jesse Neal cared. EV2 was about to watch Rob Van Dam get murdered. They were like, he's got it. Or they didn't. Jesse Neal and Shannon Moore. Had it not been for Jesse Neal and Shannon Moore, who had not been on TV for weeks before this, Rob Van Dam would have died. That's what they're telling me. That he would... Shit. Okay, so... Now, they start to talk about... Now that the Pope is talking about... Is basically siding with Sting and Jarrett. Or Sting and Nash against Jarrett and Joe. They start interviewing the Pope, and it's basically the same interview they did last week. But now, they actually do talk to Kevin Nash. And for the first time, really, Kevin Nash is actually talking, for once putting into words the stuff that was just implied about the WCW stuff. Because before they were just saying, you remember in WCW all that stuff that happened? Or Nash would say something like, you got a lot of skeletons, but I'm not going to say nothing. Or, Hogan Hogan ran WCW, and we all know how that ended. Being really vague. And that was by design, they were being vague. But for the first time, Nash actually outlined stuff. Like, outlined stuff that he had a complaint against Hogan. He says, there's two kinds of people in this business. There's workers and there's wrestlers. The difference is, workers get paid. Workers are company men. And it's guys like Jarrett, and it's guys like Hogan. He says, nobody gets paid more than Hulk Hogan. Nobody ever got paid more as a worker than Hulk Hogan. And he says, back when Hogan was running WCW, I was booking. He says, I booked WCW with Hogan, and Hogan was all about the money. He was all about the TV time. And he said, if you ever pitched an idea that didn't involve him, he'd shoot it down. If you pitched an idea that involved money, he'd shoot it down, because it was all about, he skimmed the cream, he kept all the money for himself. He was all about the Benjamins. So, like, if there was a storyline that involved him getting less TV time, he says, we wanted to do a storyline where he was the commissioner and not in the ring. And he's like, that doesn't work for me, brother. I want to be in the ring because wrestlers get paid. I would have, if I didn't do that, if I was commissioner, I wouldn't be wrestling. I wouldn't get as much TV time. And I'm all about the TV time. I'm all about the money. And so he kept talking about how, he was in it just to make himself look good and make himself get paid. For the first time, we actually brought something to light. How Hulk Hogan was corrupt. How Hulk Hogan is in it for himself. How Hulk Hogan is in it to make money. And I was like, finally, thank you. I don't care, but thank you. You've given me something. And yet, here's the problem. 1, you're talking about shit in WCW, behind the scenes shit that nobody's ever seen. That shit has never been televised, ever. Shit that you have to be a guy who reads dirt sheets, who's read books about the fall of WCW, who's seen U-Shoot documentaries, who follows shows like this, better shows than this, honestly, who are knowledgeable about the backstage politics of WCW, who know how full of shit Hulk Hogan is. Not your casual viewer, not your casual TNA viewer. Like I said, anyone under the age of 27 knows nothing about any of this. So, this whole thing is based around shit that was never televised, shit that you know nothing about, and that's not a bad thing against you. Of course you wouldn't know anything about this. I barely know anything about this. Nobody knows anything about any of this, because it happened off camera in WCW, a show that is so far defunct, barely anyone even remembers it. And furthermore, this whole thing is about Hulk Hogan, who's not on TV anymore because he's having back surgeries. Apparently his back problems are just compounding on each other, one after the other. And so Hulk Hogan is not involved. He's talking about Hulk Hogan like he's relevant right now, like he's on TV, like this feud has anything to do with him, and it doesn't. Look, here's my point. This feud is Jeff Jarrett and Samoa Joe against Kevin Nash, Sting, and the Poe. Okay? At no point in any of this has this feud ever been about Jeff Jarrett or Samoa Joe. The two good guys in this feud have no stake in anything that happens. Kevin Nash and Sting, their problem is with Bischoff and Hogan, who are not even taking an interest in this storyline at all. And like Jeff Jarrett's own connection to the story is like, if we don't oppose Sting and Nash, they will destroy the heart and soul of TNA. And I've talked about, like how, why, I don't know, but like it's almost like they're having two different feuds. It's like Booker T is feuding with Edge over a shampoo commercial, and Edge is feuding with Booker T because Kane knocked up Lita. And that doesn't make any sense. It's like two entirely different feuds that aren't even connected, involving wrestlers who aren't even around anymore, who aren't even interacting with one another. You see what I mean? It's like, it has nothing to do with anything. So, reaction. Really, they just talked about, the Impact Player of the Week was Shannon Moore. Alright. I don't know. But yeah. This has gone on for so long. And honestly, I really want to see Bound for Glory now. They've actually, you know what? Mission accomplished, Dixie. I want to see Bound for Glory because this is going to be such a clusterfuck. It's going to be artistic. It really is. It's going to be something. And I really do want to see Motor City Machine Guns versus Generation Me. But I've been going on, Jesus Christ, I've been talking for probably a better part of an hour, maybe more. So I want to wrap it up. Next thing you'll see from me is actually, I have to talk about this NXT. Sean apparently was ill and not able to do Raw, so we'll give him a pass, and so we'll probably see him next week. But until then, Impact sucks. Have a good one, guys.